welcome everybody to our Priestesses in Conversation. This is part of a series that we've been doing, but this one is, to me, a really special occasion, because having Janet here is just an absolute honour. I only met Janet and her husband Gavin, who's there as well in the background of the camera, just to one side. There he is. We only met recently in Glastonbury at the Occult Conference this year, and my first reaction was a bit of fangirling, starstruck, and then you know, as often happens in these situations, we start chatting and things just become more relaxed, and then you think, why was I ever so nervous? So I'm really honoured that Janet's agreed to join us here. You can tell from my voice I'm just a little bit excited. So I have to admit, Janet, that my first ever book on modern pagan witchcraft was The Witch's Bible. It was gifted to me by a friend in the very early days of my journey into modern pagan witchcraft. So I feel like you've been with me and part of my journey all the way through from the beginning. And my teacher, who taught me many great things, once said to us quite frequently, in this life we all die beginners. So I'm aware, you know, I teach witchcraft classes at Treadwell's. I've been doing this for quite a few years, but I learn so much as I'm teaching and as I'm having these conversations with people. So I want to kind of introduce you to everybody here. I'm sure everybody knows who you are, because I can't imagine that you know, anyone wouldn't, but you've been part of this scene for so long, and I'm really intrigued to, you know, get to the grips with some of your opinions on things, where you think things have started, where they're going, where they should be going, where they've gone wrong. There's all sorts of things I think we're going to touch on during the discussion today. You've been writing books for many years, obviously. My first question I wanted to ask you is actually, and this is probably like asking someone to name their favourite child, but if you were to say which book is your favourite of all the ones you've written, what would it be?
You've got an answer there. I suppose. Right, okay, let me state something first of all. I never liked that title, Witch's Bible. Hated it. That was the publisher. But as you know, it was originally 2 books put together, 8 Sabbaths for Witches and The Witch's Way.
Yeah.
I suppose my favourite was that original 8 Sabbaths, and there's a reason for that. Once we moved to Ireland, as Stuart said, because we had Alexander's, you know, Book of Shadows copied, and Stuart looked at it and he said, this is a load of rubbish, because there's no guts to it. Mm. It's bits of the Gardnerian Book of Shadows, but there's nothing else to this. We looked at Irish folklore and mythology, and Stuart said, we can expand on this. Mm. So he tried going through everything he could think of. Robert Graves. Now, we all know Robert Graves was a bit of a, I'm not going to say the word, but you know what I mean. But nevertheless, you know, it was interesting to read. So there were bits of Robert Graves. And of course, there was my beloved Doreen Valiente. Mm. And Doreen was wonderful. She was a huge help to us, because as we started researching the Irish folklore and putting 8 Sabbaths for Witches together, we thought we need a publisher. So our agent said, well, there is a publisher that publishes books by a witch lady called Doreen Valiente, a publisher called Robert Hale. So we wrote to Doreen for an introduction. And to our delight, she said, no problem. She said, let me see the manuscript. So we sent her the manuscript. She went, this is brilliant. Yeah. Let's meet. And from then on, a wonderful friendship formed. And everything I had started out with in the craft went out the window. All went out and Doreen came in, and she was a breath of fresh air. She was one of those women, and this is why I'm talking about her now. Just an example. Gavin and I were in London some years ago, and I was introducing him to the pagan community. And some of them were not very nice to Gavin. In fact, they were cows, to put it, you know, crudely. And then I took him down to meet Doreen. We were on the back of his motorbike. And so it's pissing buckets of rain. We are both soaked to the skin. And as we arrive at Doreen's apartment, she drives up in her little car with her high priest, Ron. And the first thing she's confronted with is two soaking wet bikers. Ron, being the gentleman, gets in front with his staff. He's going to defend Doreen. And I had to say, Doreen, it's me, it's Janet Farrar. And she took one up. She goes, oh, do come in. So we followed her into the apartment. She put the gas fire on. She said, you're soaking wet. Give me all your wet things right now. You sit down there and I'll make a nice hot cup of tea and get you some cake. And I said to Doreen, or I said to Gavin afterwards, I said, what did you make of her? And he said, she is a real priestess. That is the way a priestess should be. And that's why I learned so much from Doreen, even before I met Gavin, because she taught me about how to be a priestess. She taught me what you do and what you do not do. You do not sit on a throne looking down at your students sitting around at your feet adoringly. You get off your backside and you peel the potatoes, because that's exactly what Doreen would have done. So she became my real instructor in witchcraft. So that is my favorite book, because A, researching it was wonderful. Meeting people all over Ireland was exceptionally brilliant. And having Doreen go, wow, this is one of the most important books ever written on witchcraft. That meant the whole bloody world to me, darling.
Yeah. So I think that's an amazing story. Part of what we're here to talk about is the role of the priestess, the path of the priestess, because certainly for me, that's kind of like the crucial thing in Wicca is this sense of service to the gods, isn't it? And I was looking at the inner mysteries over the last few days and noticed that you say very clearly in there that we're servants to the gods, not commanding. We're not going to come in and start demanding things. What do you think Doreen in particular taught you most about that role of the priestess? What was it she imparted to you that kind of left you so inspired at the time?
Two things. Never bow down to the gods, but respect them as you would respect your own parents. In other words, treat them as friends, but be very respectful. Some gods you can actually have fun with. I mean, Odin is classic. You can have a lot of fun with Odin. Freya is, well, she's my deity. Yeah. She's Gavin's deity. Yeah. She loves to have beautiful things given to her, especially flowers. So you're always respectful to her, and you're respectful to her pussycats. And that means if a stray cat turns up on the doorstep, you better well take it in, because Freya says, here, I'm sending you another cat. Simple as that. So that was one of the things Doreen taught me, to be humble, to be appreciative of the gods, but also never take yourself so bloody seriously that you think you're some grand high poobah. In other words, get off your throne and peel the potatoes. Yeah. Yeah. So that was very much Doreen's attitude. And that means working with the common people in the street. In other words, be part of humanity. And if you're part of humanity, you are automatically an ecologist. You have to be. And it doesn't matter what color they are, what religion they are, what background they're from. We are one giant family. And that was Doreen's attitude. And as a family, we respect each other, each other's beliefs, philosophies, even ways of life, which is, I mean, I found it very interesting with my own coven. When we came to Ireland, two of our priests who came along were rather shy about admitting they were gay, they were homosexual, because they thought they wouldn't be accepted. And my attitude is, come on in, you're part of us. You know, you're as much part of us as we are part of you. So I initiated the first two gay people in the whole of Ireland. And then later on, we met at a festival in England, a place called Groby, up in Leicestershire, isn't it? Groby? Yeah. And there I met a gentleman at the time who was going through the transition, was transsexual. And later that person came and lived with us for a while in Ireland. It wasn't easy living with her. because she was a difficult person at that stage in her life because of the transition. But, you know, she was part of us. We initiated her. And then when Gavin and I were in America a little while ago, she'd settled down, she'd had the transition, she was a different personality, and she was happily married to a lady lawyer. And I'd watched her blossom from that rather clumsy transition she was going through into somebody who I was proud to say, you are one of mine, you know, you're one of my priestesses. But you've got to remember, back in the 70s, it was a no-no to initiate gays, lesbians, and certainly transsexuals. So we broke all the rules. And I'm pleased to say, I'm bloody glad we did.
So am I. I was just about to say exactly the same thing. I'm glad you did as well. I think we should be sending this message out to Farrars, you know, as far and wide as we can, really. How do you think the craft has changed in your period of being part of it? What do you think's changed the most?
Oh, you've asked a big one there, darling. There is still inside the craft an element of male domination. It's still there, but, and it's not just because of this goddess figure, it's because women have said, we've had enough. And women are taking control again, but they're making it an equality with the men of the craft. So there's a new balance coming into the craft, which I am delighted to see. The misogynistic aspects that were there have got to die out, because if they don't, the craft will die out. And what will be left will be a fragmented paganism of witchcraft. And I don't want to see that happen. So I think that's been one of the major changes, that it's taken time. And I think that what's happening is that the gods themselves are playing a lovely joke on us. After all, they see us in the sense that we might see a toddling 1-year-old. So we're toddlers, and toddlers have to grow. They have to learn to walk and talk and react. And that's what's happening to the craft today. It's growing up, it's maturing. And I love going to festivals where I see these vibrant young people, and they've got so much going for them. They've got so many ideas. I mean, for God's sake, there are techno witches out there, you know. I don't care what they are, as long as they are putting something positive to the future. And now we are seeing something which is not just in the craft and paganism, but is worldwide, which was not around so much in the 70s or even the early 80s. And that is love for the mother, ecology, working with this planet. I mean, where we live, and I noticed this when you sent me the questions, you were asking about, you know, how the wheel of the year affects us. Well, you yourself, you know what it's like to live in the country. You cannot live in the countryside without being affected by the wheel of the year. In an agricultural land, I mean, I see the lambs coming into the world in early January, and my landlord, you know, he has a sheep farm and breeds pedigrees. And we often toddle down when he's got the newborns toddling around all over the place, and I get to cuddle them, and they're still all sticky and wet and lovely, and think your fingers are mummy's teeth, etc. It's a wonderful experience. But you know something very interesting? One of the ways I saw it in action with Gavin when we were abroad was in Italy. And that was quite something. We decided we were going to do the rites of Dionysus, because we were staying in the countryside, and there was a wonderful grapevine growing over the place we were staying with. We had this beautiful Italian boy, and he took on the role of Dionysus. Oh my God, he went into trance. He was brilliant. He roared like a lion, etc. And we tied him with the grapevines. In the fields, a few fields over, we could see the combine harvesters bringing in the harvest, and the grape harvest was being harvested. And we watched agriculture in Italy timed with the rites of Dionysus. My God, that was powerful. And I know there are witches who don't really have much of a chance to react to the countryside. You know, they're town and city witches. But there's always something you can do to put yourself in tune with it. whether it's watching nature programs on television or growing your own herbs in the kitchen, anything that connects you with Earth Mother is so important. Because after all, when we refer to her as our mother goddess, she really is. Lovelock knew that when he wrote the Gaia hypothesis.
Yeah.
You've only got to look at those first pictures taken from when men left this planet and look back on planet Earth.
Yeah.
And we're, wow, she's beautiful.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, Stuart summed it up. What makes a witch? A sense of wonder.
Yes.
And it's something we should never lose.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those things, isn't it? I was one of my fellow friends in the craft wrote a book about wonder and how we exercise that sense of almost childlike wonder and curiosity in the world, and how, you know, spending time in nature, I think, for me, is always about extending out your curiosity and just observing what's going on and watching it and watching all the small details. Just
there is something I would like to add to that.
Mm.
And it is something that saddens me, actually.
Mm.
There are still witches stuck in the past.
Mm.
They are stuck with this rigid idea of what Gardner wrote and what Sanders wrote.
Yeah.
And it's all ritualistic. Everything's ritualistic.
Mm.
What they don't understand is that that does not take the craft forward. Everyone has ritual in their lives. I mean, it can be an everyday thing. I mean, I always make sure my altar to Freya has fresh flowers on it.
Mm.
But ritual isn't all of it. And when I see them going through the same thing over and over and over again, I think you're not learning anything. And I've seen some strange things with, you know, with people in the craft where they're so stuck in this rigidity. They look at me in horror. What do you mean you don't believe in angels and demons?
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed the Da Vinci Code. So what are you going to make of that, darlings? And they look at me and they go, no, but you don't understand. You don't understand, Janet. And I go, no, darlings, you don't understand. I'm not a Christian. I'm not a Jew, and I'm not a Muslim. I'm a witch. And I'm sorry, that belongs to them. It doesn't belong to me.
Yeah.
Because if there were those kind of nasties out there, animals would accept and acknowledge that, you know, oh, there's something bad and evil out there. Animals will react to something that frightens them.
Mm.
But that, I mean, you've got a puppy dog there. That dog doesn't know anything about angels and demons. If it doesn't smell right, he barks at it.
Yeah.
Or if you've got a cat, it hisses at it, you know. But if they could think what we think, they think the human race is fucking mad.
Yeah, absolutely. So we often see, don't we, when people are writing about Gerald or Alex, there's a very heavy emphasis on Gerald being grandfather of the craft. You know, Alex is the king of the witches, and, you know, various.
Not my king.
No, not my king neither. And I'm interested in how, you know, you said you spent quite a lot of time with Doreen and that she was a breath of fresh air. What do you think her role was in the creation of this thing that we do? And how far do you think she was underestimated in her place in that kind of lineup of the early practitioners?
I think she was very underestimated. I think it was Gavin who summed it up when he said Gardner was the sort of father of modern witchcraft.
Mm.
Doreen was the mother of modern witchcraft, and Stuart was the midwife.
Mm-hmm.
I can see where he was coming from with that, because Doreen was very much the mother of modern witchcraft. A lot of what we have comes from Doreen.
Yeah.
She wrote some of the most useful books on witchcraft.
Mm.
And it wasn't about ritual. It was about things that people might never have known about, you know, unless, I mean, okay, let me give you an example. The Cimaruta of Italy. She has it in her books, you know, little Cimaruta, where she found that for herself. If people hadn't, in the early stages, got hold of Doreen's books, they might have said, well, what the hell's a Cimaruta? So she opened up a whole new perspective for people through things like the ABC of witchcraft. And Gavin's looking for a book at the moment, and I don't know what he's doing, but he's a very strange person, but I love him. Well, there he is.
We have two of you on side there, you see.
What, darling?
So that's why it's useful having both of you there, because Gavin can look for the books and
Yes, he's just got old Dory's books down.
magic. Yes, absolutely. Is that one of your favourites?
Guess whose bare bum that is?
You're going to tell me it's your bare bum?
That's my bare bum.
It's fabulous bare bum.
And that's me too, sitting on the banks of a river. When I was young and beautiful and nobody called me a cow. Oh, I won't go into that. That's the other thing I learned as a priestess.
Yeah.
And I learned that for a very simple reason. When I came into the craft, I loved, as I said, the earthiness of Doreen, the nurturing of Doreen. But I looked at a lot of people around me, what I called the grand high poobahs, where they had fancy titles, they had this, they had that and the other. And I thought, well, okay, I'm a high priestess, I'm a witch queen. What a load of bollocks. I'm just a witch. Drop the titles.
Yeah.
Which has upset some teenagers who said, how dare Janet Farrar say we can't call ourselves high priestesses? And I'm going, no, you don't understand. I don't call myself a high priestess. If I'm running a circle, I might be the high priestess of that circle on any given night, or I might not. But what I did do, I cultured inside myself a sense of humor. I decided the craft needs a clown, and I'm going to be it. I want to be approachable. I want to develop a sense of humor to have people laugh with me or laugh at me. I don't care. I don't want to be somebody who, oh my God, it's the great Janet Farrar. Because my attitude is, put me on a pedestal, I'm going to fall right off. In fact, here's proof. Gavin will show you the proof. This was given to me. How can I do it? Oh, it's up there, isn't it? I can't. Gavin, how do I do this? You do it.
So into your face. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
It's the Grand High Poobah's toad.
Oh, fabulous.
It's the order of the bad toad. And that is the noble order I have created. To be a bad toad, you have to eat kitty kibble, drink stale, very flat, cheap beer, which you spit in your neighbour's face, and you go, Bill the cat. And that makes you a Grand High Poobah of the noble order of Bill the cat.
Oh.
So that's what I am. I'm a high priestess of Bill the cat. Bill the cat. The is coughing up your fur balls, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you don't, there goes the other fur ball. If you don't use the high priestess title, how important to you is the priestess label? Is that one that you wear easily?
Priestess is something that I wear every single day of my life. And Gavin has the same as a priest, because it is about serving the community. And when you serve the community, that is everybody. For example, in Ireland, one of the things I'm so pleased about, the health board, which is rather like the English health board, etc., have me down as a visitor, for a chaplain for hospital visits, death counselling and all this sort of thing. And that's important to me, because that's serving the wider community. And that's what a priest or a priestess should do. You are a priest or priestess 24/7. It's part of your life, honouring the gods, honouring humanity, and being there for people in need. I mean, my door is always open. We get people come here who need help. And some of them are very terrible, sad, unhappy people, abused people, frightened people, people with curses. We had one farmer whose cattle were committing suicide. So he went to the local priest, and the priest said, have you been to the veterinary surgeon? He said, yeah, I went to the vet, and the vet doesn't know what the hell's going on. He sent me to you. And the priest said, well, I don't know, go and see the witches. So we had to go and break the curse on his land, because the fairy folk, the Duinashi, were playing havoc with his cattle because somebody had upset their sacred site. Some fundamentalist Christians from America who hadn't a clue what they were doing. So we had to go and make appeasements to the Duina She, the fairies. And it was quite funny, actually, because I said to him, well, you're a good Christian. Do you believe in Saint Bridget? And he said, oh, yes, I do. Right. Your sister owns a pub and a shop, doesn't she? Yes. Now I want you to go down there, get a pound of butter, a pint of milk from your cows, and a bottle of Jameson whiskey. He toddled off. He came back 10 minutes later with all the accoutrements. And I said, right, you're going to make an offering to Saint Bridget. Put the butter on the ground. So he did that. Now pour the milk on the ground and say each time, bless my cattle, look after them. So he did that.
Yeah.
Now pour the bottle of Jameson on the ground. He went, the whole bottle? No. I went, oh, yes, you do. You could see his face. His eyes were squeezed shut and he's going, oh, no, I'm pouring the Jameson on the ground.
Yeah. And it worked.
Oh, yeah, it worked all right, because about 3 or 4 weeks later, he contacted us and sent us a photograph. Oh, reminds me, there's one of our pussycats. A photograph of his cattle, and there was a beautiful newborn calf.
Oh.
So, I mean, in Ireland, if you call yourself a witch, you better come up with the goods.
Yeah.
There's no mistaking it, because if you don't come up with the goods, then you're in big trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
So running around in circles, summoning the gods is not what you are in this country. Down here in Ireland, it's get down and get dirty.
Yeah, absolutely. So taking us back, I'm kind of pulling us back into the idea of gender roles and how we, you know, male and female are now coming into more balance in the craft. How important do you think the aspect of empowering femininity was in the earlier part when you first came into the craft?
I think at that stage it was very important, because, and actually it's still important today. You know, it doesn't go out of being important. I think if you consider we had so many thousands of years, 2,000 years of patriarchy.
Yeah.
And as children, many of us were raised as Christians or Jews or Muslims, and we were always under the thumb of that patriarchal aspect of religion. So to discover this female aspect was enlightening. It was a bit of a problem for me, because I used to be a Sunday school teacher. Grandfather was a theologian. So I already knew enough about this goddess figure, especially as I was a very privileged child. My next door neighbour, I grew up in the East End of London. I mean, I'm a true-born Cockney. My next door neighbour was Howard Carter, who discovered Tutankhamun. That was his second cousin. So I grew up on his letters home and everything else. So from a little girl, I would sit beside her on the settee and she'd show me the letters and everything else. And I knew all about the goddess Isis at about the age of 8 years old. So I knew that there had been goddesses worshipped in the past. I just didn't realize until I came into the craft that, hey, people are still doing this. I mean, I knew the Hindus did that, but they were out there somewhere. They were in a place called India. And, you know, then it sort of kind of dawned on me. We've been missing something for a long time. And here she is. And she doesn't go away. She keeps popping up. And if you live in a Catholic country like Ireland, we're surrounded by her.
Yeah.
She stands on the street corner, you know, there she is, baby in arms, serpent under her feet, grinning from ear to ear, surrounded by flowers. And underneath that, we have a wicked sense of humour. We want to do little footprints over the road to the hotel in the middle of the night, you know. She's got down off her plinth and gone for a quick one.
Yeah. And how has the path of the priestess changed over your career in the craft? Is it something that's remained consistent? Is it something that has grown and developed as you've grown to understand it more?
It's developed. It's developed a lot, because priestesses are taking on greater responsibility. It's, in a sense, we've really discussed that, because in a sense it's about the fact that you are a priestess 24/7. Whereas it was something that I think when I first came into the craft, you were a priestess, but it was all very mysterious. It was that hidden aspect, you know, you went to the coven at the weekend, but of course we're witches, we have all the secrets, and you know, oh, we can't tell you what a priestess is. And I actually remember that in a shop in Northampton, which was run by a friend of mine, and he had displays in his cabinets, including a crown. And a mother came in with her little girl who was about 9 years old. And of course, she looked at the crown, her eyes actually were glowing. And she said, "Mummy, what's that?" And the mother turned around and she goes, "That's a secret. You won't know about that until you're initiated." And I'm thinking, what? You know, oh, come on, lady. So it's changed a lot. There was that aspect of we're something very important, down to, well, no, we're not that important really, but we serve a function.
Yeah.
You know, we are the nurturers, we are those that pick up the pieces. And that is, I think, basically one of the major roles of a priestess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Helping to heal society.
One of my recent classes that I was teaching, one of the students popped up and said, if Wicca is a religion of priests and priestesses, who are the congregation? And I thought that's an interesting way of looking at it, because I'm not a Christian, so I don't see that there's that demarcation between priest, priestess and congregation. And I think somehow, if you're not careful, if you see everybody as part of the congregation, again, it's creating that distance.
Yes.
Placing us on a pedestal.
It's insular.
Yeah.
If you look at it that way.
Yeah.
And to be absolutely honest, even a neophyte is learning to be a priest and priestess.
Yeah.
And there is no congregation in witchcraft. There can't be. And if there is, you're doing it wrong, folks.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm looking at the questions in the chat, because I'm going to start asking you some of
Well,
those.
there's one here I specifically want to answer.
Which one would you like to start with, Janet?
Oh, this is so important.
Is it Malik?
All witches are pagan, but not all pagans are witches, was the original phrase.
Yeah.
By the 90s, it became all Wiccans are witches, but not all witches are Wiccans. And that is historically incorrect. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is your lesson for the day. Researched by Gavin. The word Wicca was originally pronounced wisha. It is an Anglo-Saxon word with a soft C, not the hard C of Irish and Scottish Gaelic. So remember, it's wisha. And it can be traced back as far as the law of the codes of King Alfred the Great. So you are a member of the wisha. And that is the word for witch. It derives from that single word, wisha.
Yeah.
And it was found in dictionaries prior to Gardner, where it just meant an oracle, a soothsayer, a spellcaster, etc. Gardner spelt Wicca using one hard C, not the true Anglo-Saxon spelling.
Which is two.
So double C, and it's wishes. You're a member of the wisha.
Yeah.
Not the Wicca.
We're stuck with it now, though.
We're stuck with it, but there it is, folks. There's your lesson for the day.
Yeah. Can I just say something?
Yes,
I know it's a
you know-
business conversation. So,
So this is Gavin, everybody, if you've not met.
so, no.
My other half, my better half.
So I actually practice Anglo-Saxon paganism.
Yeah.
I did before I actually came into the craft. So what happened was, when Gardner says he heard the term Wicca from somebody in the first coven he was in the New Forest, and he put it down as W-I-C-A, as heart. So it could have been that he misheard it. The other possibility is he did it that intentionally because it was just after the Second World War, and you'd be surprised how many people saw Anglo-Saxon as being German, and they didn't want that association. So you got this steering of association towards Celtic, so hence the single C. And there was a possibility that's why it went that way. So I came in the 80s, and Janet will tell you this as well. It wasn't an important word.
No.
Even when I came in about 84, 85, when I started studying, it just wasn't an important word. It was a useful word for when parents said, why have you got these strange things in your cabinet in the bedroom, like a bowl of salt and water? You could turn around and say, well, that's because I'm practicing Wicca.
His mum thought he was taking
She
drugs.
thought I was on cocaine. I said, it's quite you put a finger in it. I said, I couldn't use the word witch because if you use the word witch with somebody, they turn off immediately. But
Yeah.
Wicca gave you a chance to explain. So this is how it was used. Now, Alexander's had actually also made a statement, Wicca is the religion of witchcraft. Now, here's the problem, but historically, there are so many numerous specific goddesses of witchcraft that statement is really also irrelevant.
Yeah.
Again, historically, it's irrelevant. It's again not knowing where the word comes from. But Wicca becomes important. I can give you a pile of books here. I just picked up Doreen's. Look at the title, Witchcraft for Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Natural magic. ABC of Witchcraft.
Yeah.
There are no books, no English published books with the word Wicca titled until the end of the 80s, because it wasn't the important word. Which was the important word?
Anyway, shove over.
I'm enough. I preached on the subject.
Shove over. This one's all about
It came, this division between the word Wicca and witchcraft came about, and witch, because what you had, unfortunately, and I came across it, was that when you came across, if you were practicing witchcraft, you were in a self-initiatory tradition in the 80s, and you like Saxe Wicca, and you came across somebody who was Gardnerian or Alexandrian,
they would say, you're not
properly
initiated.
They would say you're not properly initiated. You're not, and so people decided this division occurred between Wicca and witch.
Anyway.
And obviously at that time we also got all the books, the Scott Cunningham books being published, didn't we, about solitary Wicca, and all of a sudden Wicca becomes something that everyone can do.
By the way, Scott Cunningham was one of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet.
Yeah.
He and I had a lovely cuddle session.
Oh, tell us about Scott Cunningham. Tell us about Scott Cunningham.
I met him once in America with Stuart.
Yeah.
And he turned up at our host's house.
Yeah.
And he just walked in with a big smile on his face. He said, oh, hello, Janet. I'm so pleased to meet you. Can I have a hug?
Oh.
So that was the start of a lovely friendship.
That's
I only ever met him that once.
Yeah.
Though he died, But he was such a babe. I wanted to put him in my pocket and bring him home.
I found in my early years, particularly before I even considered the idea of joining a coven, then Scott Cunningham books were so important to me because it was all the practicality, what do you actually do with craft and how do you do spells and all the rest of it. So I'm really glad to hear that he was such a nice man as well. I'm intrigued.
So was Ray Buckland, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, he was sweetie too. Yeah, he was a darling. Another one I wanted to put in my pocket and bring home.
Because I've got both you and Gavin there in the same room, one of the questions that's popped into the chat box, which I think is quite interesting, is Isabel's question. How do you describe the relationship between priestess and priest? And is there a difference in their responsibilities in the coven, in your opinion? What would be both of your takes on that particular one?
Right. We have an odd situation with us.
Yeah.
Because apart from anything else, we both have studied psychology.
Yeah.
And every male priest should have his buried feminine other half, his anima. And every priest there should have a masculine other half, or animus. And that means that because it is inside us, there is a difference between what I call, again, the priests of the craft who are very, we're in command, we control it, misogynistic, etc. They don't understand the true nature of witchcraft. The role of a priest, it doesn't matter specifically whether he is gay, whether he is straight, what he is. He should be able to take over that feminine side of himself and bring it out if necessary. The same with a woman. She should be able to bring out that masculine side of herself if necessary. As Pat Crowther said, a woman may strap on the sword. And that's technically what that means.
Yeah.
You should be able to swap roles.
So as you're asking both of us, I got into witchcraft because of the feminine aspect.
Yeah.
And one of the things, the biggest mistake I began to realize and see was this belief that the horned god figure was solar. He's not solar, he's lunar. Because if you go back to old hunting traditions, you hunted during the moonlight. It's why our eyes are the way they are, with the rods and cones in them. And we have, our eyes are particularly adapted to actually seeing in moonlight for hunting purposes. So the horned god figure is actually lunar. He's not actually solar. So it's specifically a lunar tradition. And the moon's very important because it's the light in the darkness. It's the things which are hidden. And that's one of the things that's sort of, I think, missed in witchcraft quite a lot, is the psychic aspects. The actual going in, exploring, specifically trying to retrieve from bright shadow those positive things which have been buried due to our culture, due to our families, and bringing those out. And that's just as important, really quite important for men.
Very important for me.
When I came into the craft, it was 80s. It was a case of the first groups I joined were so male orientated. The women were sort of, it was lip service priestesses. They were, oh yeah, she's going to be the priestess, but it was the men that were running things behind the scenes. And you did have these misogynistic comments, like, which were put into the laws. One of them was due to a falling out between Gerald Gardner and Doreen Valiente. And he put the statement in that the moon reflects the light of the sun, which is actually misogynistic. It was put in to get Doreen in her place.
That didn't work.
It didn't work. She said, bugger you, and left.
Yeah.
So you still had that attitude going on, certainly into the 80s.
I heard of a situation that happened some time ago, and I'm not going to say who said it, because I'm not even sure myself, but I know it did happen, where somebody turned around and said to basically gay men, you need to man up. Why?
Well,
I don't want men to man up.
They had to take on the male role, but that's culturally defined as the male role.
Yeah.
There's an old Anglo-Saxon tradition which is Saith, in North Sata, where the men were believed to be effeminate. The implication is that they were gay, and that's how it's been implied, but it wasn't necessarily. It was the fact they didn't fit in to the usual male roles. Now, my role is using my specific strengths to support Janet as a priestess. Now, I'm very, very good at research and delving and finding stuff out. Hence the stuff on Wicca and witchcraft, the history of it stuff. That's my strengths. That's what I support Janet with. That's my job. Principally, the whole point of Wicca was, yes, it puts the women back in charge. As women get sort of genuinely equal power in our society, then more and more, then the male role will become equal to female. That's how I feel it should be. That means at different times I have to bite my tongue and go, stop. You're being culturally male. Stand back, let Jan do what she's got to do. You know, when she comes out one of these things, she's generally right. You know, it happens sometimes because Janet will come out with psychic things. I'm going, that can't be right. And then bang, we find out a week or two later, she's absolutely right.
He has to guard me because I have one specific gift.
Which is?
I can predict earthquakes before they happen. We were down with friends in America some years ago, and we were about 50 or 60 miles outside New York City. We were in her shop, and I came out, I went to the toilet, I came out, I said, Bernadette, did you feel the earth just shake? That was an earthquake. She goes, we don't get earthquakes around here. Less than a week later, bang, it hit New York. I had Ray Buckland saying on the line to me, Janet, stop it. I don't want to know any longer. So I can just sit up and say, Gavin, earthquake.
That left us in an interesting, when we were writing the last book, which was Lifting the Veil, because Janet's very, very psychic, has some mediumship abilities as well, realizing there was a connection between those. And then as I'm researching histories of the Sibyls and the oracles, the thing that sticks out is around the Mediterranean, is that they were all placed on earthquake sites.
Yes. Yeah.
So I honestly think that there is a link between oracular ability and the ability to pick up things on an electromagnetic level. And
You're
actually-
feeling energies at a different level, aren't you?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
tuning into what that means and
I'm going to step back, otherwise I'll sort of.
Yeah, and of course
So-
it's all tied in to the seismic wave that hits before the actual quake happens,
Yeah.
which spreads out like a ripple effect. And
Yeah.
that's what I pick up on.
You're feeling that before everyone else does.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about because what I think is quite interesting in the training I had, which was Gardnerian side of the craft. I ended up going outside of my coven to seek training on the sort of.
I'm laughing.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
I
I'm gonna
enrolled
butt in.
I enrolled at the College of Psychic Studies to go and do the energy part of the training because I felt like it was something I really needed to develop and grow. I wanted to kind of work on the psychic mediumship, you know, all that side of it. But it felt very much like I was stepping outside of my coven setting to do that. What makes you what question am I asking really? I'm asking about the differences between Alexandrian and Gardnerian in that aspect. Is that something that you were trained in your coven, or was it something?
You're joking. Let's put it this
Can I
way.
just take a turn?
Stuart and I met, as you know, in Alex's coven. And I was very naive and very vulnerable back then. I was just basically a spotty teenager still. And everything Alex taught, he took from somewhere else. Franz Barden was one of his sources. But of course, we all thought, oh, this is wonderful. This is the wisdom of the Witch King, etc. No, it wasn't. It was from Franz Barden.
Yeah.
And Stuart worked as a journalist at the time. He took time off to write What Witches Do from his job, and only discovered later, and we've still got the notes in this house, that all the stuff Sanders was giving him, he could have done in his spare time from a book by Franz Barden. Stuart was not happy. He was not pleased.
There is the great myth of Wiccan training.
Yeah.
Training? No. Nothing I
wasn't.
couldn't have got from books. In fact, that's what I did.
Yeah.
In the end, I mean, by the time I'd left the coven, I was lucky enough to work for a wonderful old gentleman who was an architect, little old Jewish gentleman. And I used to take my books on witchcraft and anything else I could find, geology, into work with me. And he would encourage me. And he'd say, oh, Janet, you've got one of your books again. Yes. Which one is it this time? Oh, it's this one, Mr. Engel. Or it's that one, Mr. Engel, etc. And he was actively encouraging me in my spare time to research.
Yeah.
What a great boss to work for. I learned more doing that and from Doreen than I ever learned from Alex, except one thing: not to be taken for a fool. That was the greatest lesson Sanders ever taught me, because I suddenly looked back, I thought, you old bugger.
Yeah.
There wasn't.
I did care for him, but I would have put him over my knee if he'd been my child and smacked his ass.
So when we went to see Doreen last time we saw her, we were talking about what we did in our coven, and I mentioned that we at the time were setting essays, research questions for our students. And she said, what? It was a case of, in our day, we just picked up the theme and they threw us in the circle and you just followed along with everybody else. And that was it.
I've got to interrupt a minute. Hi, Emma. How's the babby? Put your finger up if it's okay. Wow, yay.
So I was a coven member.
Love you, darling, so much.
Coven member. So
Big kisses to Babby. Got a big belly.
So no, I mean, you didn't get any. You get in America in the late 60s, early 70s, you get a cooperation in New York where you have the Pagan Way, which starts a system of training.
Yeah.
Alex is doing rudimentary, which is more than the Gardnerians did. But it's not till the 80s you start to get the appearance of the beginnings of coherent systems of training. Particularly, you see that with Viv and Chris Crowley.
One thing I do want to say, and it's a really important thing for anyone listening to me, I've come across people in the past say, you know, unless you do this, that, and the other, you can't be a true witch.
Mm.
One of the nicest covens I ever came across was many years ago, and that was in the early 70s. They were in the countryside. There was only half a dozen of them. They couldn't read and they couldn't write. They were totally illiterate. So what they did is they got a friend to come in who they trusted. They didn't initiate that friend. They said, you know, would you help us? Well, we're friends. Yes. What do you want? If we gave you a book with rituals in it, words in it, could you teach them to us as if we're in theatre so we can learn them off by heart? And that's exactly what they did. They never had a book of shadows in their entire life, but they knew all the Gardnerian rituals off by heart because they did it over and over again. And then they branched out to do their own thing. And, you know, there were covens back then who said, well, they can't be real witches because they don't have a book of shadows. And I said, yes, they do. It's here. It's
Yeah.
in the head. And that was the most important thing, because that coven, not only were they bloody good, but they were one of the finest covens I ever came across.
Yeah. On that note, how important do you think the initiatory tradition is in the overall?
Depends entirely on your tradition.
Mhm.
I mean, we have an initiatory tradition,
Yeah.
but it differs from person to person. It's never the same again for each person, because it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It should be tailored individually. And if you want to join a coven that does that in the old way, like Gardnerian or Alexandrian, fair play to you. Go ahead, do it. But it's not the be all and end all.
So one of the questions in the chat box on there's been Robert saying, do you believe you need initiations to truly access another level of knowledge, or do you?
No. Initiation is a thing that happens inside yourself. We're losing your voice. Come back. No, we're losing you. You've gone dead.
Hi, back. Looks
Hello.
like we've lost you. Yep, try again.
That's okay.
That's really strange. I'm here. Let me.
You're back
you're
again.
Okay now. Can I answer?
No, we've lost you again.
Yeah, I've unmuted and I think I should be back now. I'm coming in.
You are back.
You're back.
No, we've lost you. Come back.
She's back. She's okay.
No,
Yeah.
She's in and out. One thing one thing I'll say about this is the whole thing. I came in through Sachs Wicca, which was self-initiatory,
Yeah.
and I kept being told I was not properly initiated. I had a guy, he was in his 50s, who had worked with Alexander's and had been with this tradition, that tradition, who told me, well, I wasn't properly initiated. I didn't know the traditions.
You didn't know the mysteries.
I didn't know the mysteries. That was I didn't know the mysteries, he says, puffing on his pipe. I had delivered 3 babies. I had been there when numerous people had passed over to the other side. I had found myself dealing with a situation where I'd walk into a cubicle, a person had died, they'd passed on, but they were still, I could feel them still there, and I had to do passing over rites to the other side.
But you didn't know
But
the mysteries.
I didn't know the mysteries.
Right.
It's much about, I was a staff nurse. Okay, at that point, I was just coming into my training as a student nurse. I was a staff nurse. It's as much about the experiences you have as anything else.
Yeah.
Our initiations that we created to work with our last coven were created to cause change. Now, if a tradition says to be part of our tradition, you must do the initiation, that's fine. There's initiatory rites to make you part of a group.
Yeah.
But the most important one is the one that causes change. I mean, I went through, this is what happened to me. I did my own dedication to Farrar, and it worked. It worked. It turned my life upside down for somewhere in the region of like 5-6 months because of the effects of it. So you don't need a coven to have that happen to you. What you have to do is be resolute that you are going to study and learn and experience.
Yeah.
What is important. one of the things Dorian Valiente said was, you can tell a witch by the way they look in their eye.
I just saw a message flash up.
Yeah.
Somebody said they lost their wife for 50 years. Who is that? Who am I talking to?
Is that in the Zoom chat?
It just appeared on the screen here. Said, you know, Janet, I've just lost my wife for 50 years.
Or maybe it's a direct message that I'm not seeing.
That might be a direct message. If that person wants, we can connect you to have a conversation separate to this one, if that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, whoever it is, work with these guys and get back to me.
Yeah, drop us an email and we'll help facilitate that conversation separately.
Thank you.
So, and it's interesting what you're saying about initiation. I often found that with my initiations, it's almost like the changes were happening already, and the initiation ceremony kind of sealed that agreement.
Yeah.
The change came first, and then the initiation
Yes.
happened.
Yes.
I can always tell somebody where that's happened to. You know how?
No.
It's their eyes. It's in their eyes.
Mm,
You've got it.
yeah.
That means it worked, darling.
There's
It worked.
also-
Good work.
There's also an attitude
Yeah.
with the person, how they are. You cannot be self-initiated into gardening or Alexandrian. That's not part of the rules of those traditions.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you can't be a witch or be a
Mm.
Wiccan. And my view is there is no such thing as self-initiation, because if you do the work, if you go into circle and you're physically by yourself and you call, so she goes, I'm preaching, you see, she knows when I preach, with Reverend Gavin. If you call divinity into the circle and it turns up, you are not alone.
Yeah.
Can you get me a glass of wine, darling?
She's getting rid of me now.
Rock on.
Tactics.
I told you I developed a sense of humour, and I had to. That's me getting knocking off the pedestal. You know, everybody get down
Yeah,
and do it.
absolutely. Absolutely. So we've got a range of really good questions in the Zoom chat that are in the group
Right,
chat.
chuck them in.
Chuck them in. So yeah, keep bringing your questions, everybody. We've got one here about can you say that your understanding of the craft has moved from more ritualistic to a more shamanic approach?
Totally,
So
absolutely, 100%.
yeah,
That term shaman,
I hate the term shaman,
yeah.
but
animistic,
animistic. Oh, yes,
trance-orientated.
totally.
I was going to say, if you weren't going to use the word shaman, what would you use instead? So I think you,
Animistic.
Yeah,
um,
we're animistic
that-
witches. That's
yeah,
the
that
best way to
comes
put
from
it.
living in Ireland, which is basically spook and spirit central.
yeah,
You have to live out in the countryside here.
Rituals nice, you know, as I said, you can
That's
have
fine.
little personal rituals. But my attitude is that my gods don't need ritual.
I was going to say that was my next thought, is how important is ritual to you? So in your coven, you know, we talked about the fact that some covens will do the same ritual again and again and again. Others innovate and write different ones each time they meet. Do you
Let
do
me tell
written
you a little.
rituals?
Let me tell you a little story.
Yeah.
Over the gold bar of heaven, and everybody listen, is Auntie Janet preaching. The god and the goddess were leaning one day, and the goddess was there smiling down at everybody. And the god comes up and he says, "Hello, darling, what's going on down there?" And she goes, "There's that little planet down there, that blue one. It's very pretty, but there's some strange things going on down there." And God said, "Well, what?" And she goes, "I don't know.
Mm.
It's a bit bizarre. They seem to be all dressed in these robes or nothing at all, and they're doing strange things. I wonder what they're doing." So the god sort of thinks for a minute. He says, "Wait a minute, I'm going to send Hermes down, let him sniff around."
Mm-hmm.
So Hermes goes and has a quick sniff around, and he flies back through the golden gates. And the Lord and Lady are sitting there, and she's chewing her fingernails in frustration. She goes, "Hermes, I'm dying of curiosity. What are they doing?" "They're actually worshipping both of you, and you, my lady, especially." Oh, isn't that nice?" says the goddess. Says the god, "It's wonderful. Pray tell them to continue. Now, where were we with that game of chess we were playing, darling? Just ignore them." That's our attitude. The gods
Yeah.
aren't really interested in ritual. They're interested in what you do. And
Mm.
that doesn't mean that you have to do a ritual over
Rituals
and
are
over
tools.
again. They're going to get as bored as we would if we
Yeah.
were the gods.
All these things are tools.
Yeah, exactly.
Ritual is a tool. Your magical tools are just that, tools. Okay, they might be consecrated, they might have an etheric double, they might have an astral double, but they're still just a tool
Yeah.
to create specific things to happen. This is what people forget. So people end up getting to this more dogma of doing the same rituals
Mm.
when they're not succeeding or achieving the goal. And this is what you see a lot in Wicca, unfortunately.
You don't just sit in Wicca. I mean, I was thinking yesterday watching the coronation, and there's an example. Here's a man in his 70s, older than I am,
Mm.
and he's having this thing put on his head which weighs a bloody ton. Ritual should be adaptable. It
Yeah.
would be much nicer they place it on his head and then they take it off. And the same with Camilla. And
Mm.
they had it carried on cushions in front of them, out of the Abbey to the Golden Coach, where they can get in, put the crowns back on the head while they go through the crowds, take them off at the palace and just do it briefly, but
Mm.
not have to wear the damn things the whole time. It's ritual gone mad. It's not thinking about the person concerned.
Mm.
In our sense, when we do ritual, it's not thinking about the gods, what they really want.
And what would you think is the most important purpose of ritual in that case? Is it about altered consciousness? Is it about celebration? Is it about...
It's a bit of
there,
both.
right? Is there necessarily a difference?
Mm.
Okay, like I said, ritual when we're doing is about what's the goal you're trying to achieve. In the word connection. So if you're doing a Sabbath ritual, it's about connecting with the countryside. It's connecting with those energies, the changes, the power tides of the year. That's the purpose. Some of the first Sabbath rituals I did were very simple ones on a place called Winchester Hill, southern England, where was somebody and he was just demonstrating the change by, he just gone around and picked up bits of tree, bits of flora, and he was showing the change in the year to make us connect.
And also you've got
So
to
there's that
think
word
where you
connect.
are, what country you're in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's no good if you're in America worshipping the corn king when corn is sweet corn.
yeah. Where,
You
you know,
know.
what's the point of doing corn king ritual in a country where there's no corn, or a place where there's no corn? I mean, it's about the connection. If you're doing a ritual to connect with deity, it's about connection. And if that ritual isn't working, trust me, there's a lot of things about the drawing down the moon ritual which doesn't work. Then you have to change it and you have to mend it, because it's about making the connection. So the thing about ritual is that word, connection, and making it.
Are there ways that you think we can prepare for that connection better? What would make it more successful?
Something quite simple.
Yeah.
Common sense.
Mm.
Use your common sense. If you're going to write a ritual, think, right, what do we need? What's happening out there around me? Who's going to be here?
Yeah.
How can we get
Knowledge,
this?
right.
And knowledge. It should
We
be
called it
knowledge-based ritual.
ritual. Knowledge-based ritual means that. Now, they were back in the 80s, I saw ritual being done in two ways. I saw these rituals where people would either completely utterly learn the words, or they'd stand in circle with a piece of paper going, we now invoke the Oak King and his brother, the Holly King, to fight in the circle. It was like that.
Yeah.
And then the other way was somebody would come into a circle and just literally try to spontaneously do a ritual, and they really didn't have any understanding of what they were doing.
Yeah.
I saw a fight. I saw a fight break out because of that, actually in circle. So what we started to do, what we called knowledge-based ritual.
We had a situation in this country some years ago where there was a well-known witch visiting Ireland.
Yeah.
And we went along to see her because I'd met her many years ago. And her adoring fans turned up.
Yeah.
And they invoked this goddess and that goddess and the other goddess all at once.
There was no knowledge.
It hung in the air like bricks do not. Gavin and I went,
my
we get over
solar
here.
plexus went.
Yeah.
I was very surprised. I thought that person was very good at doing ritual and this energy work, and that was the problem. So what we taught our students was, right, you're going to do a lunacy ritual. You learn everything about lunacy you can.
Yeah.
You understand it. You understand the rituals, and then you go into a circle and now do it. Understand the energy involved in the ritual, which is what we taught, and now just do it. Do it from the heart. Now you have the knowledge to do it. You know how the energy works. You know what the festival is about. That's what you should be able to do.
Mm.
And that's incredibly powerful if you've ever seen it done. Now it's a skill. It's an art. But if you've ever seen anybody do that, the energy you feel raised just by them doing it, let alone consciously deciding to raise energy, is quite amazing.
Mm. Yeah.
Next question.
Next question. I actually want to take you right back to the beginning, which was
Oh my God. Oh my God.
first question, which I haven't even asked you, which is about, Janet, your path into the tradition. What brought you to witchcraft? What were the early pitfalls and what were the delights that you discovered?
I came into witchcraft. You remember I said I'd been a Sunday school teacher?
Yes, which
Well,
I thought sounded intriguing. How did you get from being a Sunday school teacher to being practicing?
Well, you've got to understand this. I worked in the music industry.
Yes.
I worked for Brian Epstein,
Yes.
knew the Beatles, went to the submarine premiere, all that sort of stuff. But I got through the entire 60s. I was a virgin. I didn't smoke and I didn't drink and I didn't do drugs, which was pretty unusual back then. But while I was working in the music industry, an old friend of mine had picked up this book, King of the Witches.
Mm.
And the next thing I knew, she was going down to meet this Sanders character. And I thought, well, she's going, I'm going to go as well, because I'm sorry, I've read the newspapers. I know all about it. It's sex and drugs and rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
Satanism at its best. I'm going to get her out of here. I went down and I encountered this funny little man with a cheeky grin and a smile and a wicked sense of humor. And of course, that was Alex. And I believed at that stage he really was the king of the witches. And of course, there was this tall, leggy creature with this ash blonde hair who terrified the shit out of me back then, because she was so tall. I had to go, whoa, where does she end, you know?
Yeah.
And of course, that was Maxine. But I became intrigued by them. I learned a lot over the years of knowing them. Some good, some bad, some indifferent. Yeah. I mean, Alex did try to once sell me to somebody for $5. No, come on, you know, good old Alex. That's typical of Alex. I can laugh about it now. I didn't laugh at the time. No. I gave him a right mouthful, actually. But it was what they were doing that appealed to me. Because being a Christian, having grown up with a theologian for a grandfather, who basically raised me as a child, I was interested in healing, because of course, being a good Christian, it was, you know, go out and heal the sick, you know, etc., etc. And I thought, well, maybe they know something that the church doesn't know. And I was getting disillusioned with Christianity in any case. And especially when I suddenly saw this female figure sneaking in the back door, and it wasn't just the Madonna, it was Mary Magdalene. I'm scratching my head over that one at the time. Yeah. And it all began to fall into place. And I thought, I finally found something that feels right. I didn't know at the time I should, and not because of my choice, I should have been a druid.
Oh, wow.
And the reason for that is because when my mother was carrying me in her womb, she had a full manifestation in an oak grove witnessed by Howard Carter's cousin. And it freaked the hell out of my mother. She called the police to arrest a druid who dead thousands of years ago, you know. Yeah. But she was terrified for me, because he kind of pointed at her uterus and then vanished into thin air, and she would know, oh my God, you know, he's a maniac. No, says Kath, I think you've just seen a ghost. Yeah. So especially as I'm Welsh, you know, part of me is Welsh. And so therefore that's probably the path I was supposed to have followed. But I'd met the druids at Stonehenge and I wasn't terribly impressed. So of course I became a witch instead. That's how I discovered the craft. And because I had this terrible desire for knowledge. And witchcraft opened up a whole new door for me, and not just because of Sanders, but of course, because of Doreen,
Mm.
I used to haunt Atlantis Bookshop. I didn't have much money back then from my wages. I used to actually ask my dad for money to buy books, and he'd give me the cash, and I'd trot off to the bookshop, and I would buy anything I could get my hands on from Atlantis. And that was it. You know, Atlantis was my heaven.
Yeah.
In fact, Atlantis, there's a lovely, funny story about Atlantis. I was in there one day some years ago. It was when The Witch's Bible came out.
Yeah.
And it was very early in the morning, and we were going to have a reception. And Stuart had to go and see our publisher. So he trotted off to the publisher, and I stayed in Atlantis.
Mm.
The door opened, and this man came in, and he had a portfolio of photos he'd taken, and he was showing them to people, and they were pretty good photographs. They were like landscapes. And you know when you see a face and you cannot put your finger on it.
Yes.
And his face was that familiar. And I'm walking around the shop, and it's just him and me sort of wandering around. He spots the witch's, the witch's god. And he said, oh, the book signing's not until about midday. I can't be here. I really wanted to get that book and get it signed. I'm a great fan of theirs. So they said, well, there's Janet. She'll sign it for you. And I apologise that Stuart wasn't there. So I signed the book for him. I said, who do I make it out to? And he said, Fred. So I signed it to Fred.
Yeah.
And he gave me a big kiss on the cheek. And when he went out of the shop, people were giggling at me. And I thought, what's the joke here? Oh, Janet, you are a plonker. Why? Don't you realise who that was? No, it was David Bowie.
Oh my God.
So somewhere I signed a book to David Bowie to Fred. And then on the same day,
Yeah.
Stuart and I went for lunch in Soho, where he'd been working there as a journalist. And we went to his favourite pub. He hadn't been in there for years, and it was pretty empty, and hadn't started filling up with the lunch crowd. And there were some guys there, and there was a guy at the bar. And I'm there sort of buying Stuart's favourite whiskey, and I got myself a glass of whiskey. And as I turned round, he bumped into me, and one of the whiskey glasses went flying. And he was so apologetic. He said, I'm so sorry, etc. You know, look, I'll buy you, what are you drinking? I looked at him and went, well, whiskey for my husband and myself. He said, I'll buy your drinks. And he ordered double whiskies for us. And I went over to the table and I put them down. My eyes are going, doing. Stuart said, what's on? I went, it's Queen, it's Queen. He said, what do you mean? It's Queen. He said, that's not the Queen. Yes, it is. Guess who it was?
It's good to know that you've had fangirl moments as well. It all comes to all of us.
But I love Stuart's face. He scratched his head. What's she talking about, the Queen?
Yes.
I
Absolutely.
had to educate him.
Another question I've got for you is what would be some sources outside of Wicca and witchcraft that have also had a deep influence on your experience of the craft?
Every book I could get my hands on.
Yeah.
Archaeology, geology, history. One book I've always loved, which my father got me, Myths and Legends of the British Isles.
Yeah.
And I love that book. I've still got it in the library there. Like I said, I'm a sponge. Give me knowledge and I just suck it in. It's given me heroes in my life. And these heroes are not people in the craft. Astrophysics, for example.
Yeah.
Going, oh, wow. I will watch a program on astrophysics till I'm blue in the face. And, people say, Jan, that's got nothing to do with witchcraft. I'm going, oh, yes, it has. Oh, yes, it has. So almost anything, any book at all that I find enriches my search for knowledge. There's one bit of me that hates being 73 years old, which is what I am this birthday, because there's so much I want to do out there and so much I want to learn out there. And of course, since I've had my heart attack, I'm half crippled now, so I can't climb mountains any longer or do things like that. And that's so frustrating. And I look at the younger generation and go, look, you lucky bastards, do it for me,
Yeah.
It's something that's so important, this quest for knowledge. And I think that's one of the things I've always tried to instill in people.
Yeah.
No matter what your quest is, go out there and find it.
I was going to suggest, do they want to see the library? Because I could do that.
Yeah, you
Can I
can.
see the library?
Always.
Oh,
There's a
that's
pussycat in there, I think.
It's
I have
messy.
I have got one last question that I want to ask before we disappear into the
Whoops, there
library.
goes the cat. Oh, he's in the library. He's there now.
Oh, one more question I've got for you. If you had a magic wand, and of course you have, what would you change about the craft going forwards? What do you think needs to change going forwards before we go into the library?
I'll tell you what I think is changing. I think there has to be a change in attitude
Hmm.
to what the craft is. It is not an old boys club or an old girls club. It's a growing, healthy religion,
Hmm.
and it needs to be healthy. And to be healthy, that means you've got to live in the real world. It's all very nice with your velvet robes and your cloaks. I mean, I've got them. It's all very nice with your glittery wands and, you know, everything else that goes with it.
Hmm.
But it's not witchcraft. Witchcraft is the guy walking down the street with an old baseball hat on, chatting to his girlfriend in skinny jeans, and they're going to get the weekly shopping.
Hmm.
And in it, they're going to throw in a few herbs because they're making up some potion that they need, etc.
Yeah.
Witchcraft is living in the real world, not the fantasy world. And that's what I'd like to see.
Hmm.
I'd like to see people accept that this is part of your life. And it's about knowledge.
Hmm.
And it's also about, you know, understanding as far as you can, because not everyone can do it, but understanding technology, technological breakthroughs,
Hmm.
and studying everything. Like I said, for me, show me a program on astrophysics and I'm way, you know, whoa, I love this. I'm into
Yeah.
it. I'm into anything. You know, up here is a brain box that's going 24/7 like this.
Yeah.
And that's the way the craft should be. Put your ritual books away for a while, put your books of shadows away for a while, get out there and look at other things, because they're all part of it and essential parts of it.
Yeah.
The goddess, I always say that the gods are, I call it the divine DNA of the universe.
Hmm.
And we are here to learn as much as we can for that divine DNA. And that's the important thing, being a witch. So I love you all. And as Auntie Janet would say,
Has to be done with a
Show
bit
them
of
the
naughtiness
library,
as
come
well.
on.
Show us the library.
Show the library.
Absolutely.
So we
there's a
have-
black fluffy pussycat sitting there. She is our little
Aw.
princess.
that's
Are
right.
you coming with us to the library, Janet?
Oh no, I'm sitting here nursing a hot water bottle between my feet. 'Cause
Oh.
my feet are cold.
Oh.
I don't know how much you can see.
Don't think we can yet. We're still with Janet.
Yeah, they're still with me. They're not seeing a damn thing.
That's odd. Oh my God, you're on the wrong camera.
What do you
But
mean I'm on the wrong
before we disappear, I just want to say thank you so much,
That's why you're peached down.
both of you, for joining us today. And we would love to see your library. But I just want to say how grateful I am that you've come and shared your ideas and thoughts with us, because it's been an absolute pleasure.
I love your glittery eyeshadow, darling.
Thank you.
So I realised I had you on the wrong camera.
On the wrong camera.
That's why I'm all bleached out and white looking, you know.
Okay.
I've got my Halloween face on.
Oh,
There we are.
oh, there we go. Other
There
camera.
we go.
See, this is the amazing thing about Zoom, isn't it? How many people get to say, I
Come
was
on.
in Janet's living room on a Sunday
Oh, it's all right.
afternoon.
Oh, there's Hob. Dorian Valiant is familiar.
Oh,
There's Hob.
Yeah.
Hello, Hob. He's a dirty boy.
one cat.
So this is the library. You can see
Wow.
It's messy. It needs cleaning up.
Well, that's how libraries are meant to be, though, isn't it? They're working things.
Right. So many years ago, we're traveling around the United States. We're meeting other authors, and I thought, you know what? I should be getting them to sign books.
Yeah.
That's our signed book collection.
There's a notice up there. These books are impregnated by Ebola. Touch if you dare.
Yeah. Oh,
This is a crazy house, actually. I mean, it's totally. Oh, Gav.
Yeah.
Yo, come here. Show
What's
them.
it?
Come back. Show them Freya.
Right. Oh yeah. So we have sort of like house altars.
yeah.
There's Freya's altar.
Oh, lovely.
She likes to be by the window so she
Yeah.
can look out at all nature.
This isn't
Oh.
so much a cottage as a small folk magic
Yeah.
museum. We got sort of, I don't know if you can see the little black statue.
Yes.
We've got stuff
That's
from
from the Gardner collection.
Uh-huh.
They were he picked those up in Sri Lanka in Ceylon.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's some actual. That's a genuine doll down there.
we have a piece from Tutankhamun's tomb that we were gifted with.
Yeah.
It's in there.
And we have one of the most wonderful things is we have a broken piece of pottery.
Yeah.
It is from a place called Sterkfontein in Africa. It is
Wow.
one of the first pieces of pottery ever made by man,
How
over
amazing.
I'm trying
10,000
to
years
see if I
old.
can show that to you. It's in there somewhere.
No, I've locked it up, darling.
Just locked it up. So
Yeah.
one of
Away
the
from small
nicknames for the
fingers.
cottage is the House of 100 Deities. as you can
Yes.
find.
So you've talked about Freya. Who else have you got there?
Oh
Lots,
my-
lots
oh my
of
God.
deities.
Ah,
We're-
Should I
all
say
the
who
Egyptian
haven't you got?
guys, all the Egyptian guys, the
Yeah.
Hindu guys, the
Yeah.
Greek, the Roman,
Hindu. Yeah.
the Hindu, the Celtic.
we've different times.
And you've got the Delphic Sybil over the fireplace.
Of course.
Over the years, we've sort of ended up working with Hindu deities.
Yeah.
We started doing the trance work.
And we've
Uh-huh.
even got Christian in the
Yeah.
house, in that
When
one of the
we
other
started
Catholic friends.
doing the trance, prophecy, and possession work, what we weren't expecting is Voodoo, barons, lowers,
Yeah, yeah.
turning up. And the other one which really surprised us was actually the Hindu turning up. They're quite funny, actually. They got a hell of a sense of humour.
Your Hindu deity, one of the, in fact, it was Lakshmi. Girl
Yeah.
in trance brought Lakshmi through. She did it so perfectly. She was bounced on one hip because Lakshmi may never touch the ground. She's transcendent. This girl was transcendent. She called Gavin over. She grabbed him by his cheek. She goes, "You have too much weight on you. You must lose weight."
Yeah.
That's one of my favourite photos of us.
Yeah.
With our tiger.
With your tiger. How amazing is that?
He's dead now from old age, poor old thing.
Oh.
But his children live on. It's
Yes,
part
his
of
children.
A reintroduction program. So sort of our cottage is like this. It's definitely an extension.
I think anybody
Almost.
coming in is not going to be under any illusions. So.
Yeah, it's really annoying. There's been no Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on the door.
Oh.
Or
We've had the local
evangelicals.
Catholic priest, and guess
Oh,
what?
yes.
This was lovely. The
Yeah.
local Catholic priest turned up one Christmas, knocked on the front door, smiled from ear to ear. He says, "Oh, you're the witches, aren't you?" We went, "Yes." He said, "Look, I don't know what you do this time of year, but have a lovely one." And we said, "The same to you, Father," you know.
Oh.
That was really nice.
No, I've just been waiting for years for the JWs to turn up. They've
Yeah.
been into the living room and asked to discuss the different versions of the Bible with them. So, oh yes,
Yeah.
we've got the Bible. Which
I used to
one?
have a friend that always said to me, because he was brought up as agnostic and was very spiritual, but he always said, same bush, different way around it. However we approach the gods, it's the same energy that we're approaching. It's just different.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you know one of the things that I thought was quite amazing? We were in the Languedoc in
Yeah.
France
Yeah.
some years ago, and we went to places like Rennes-le-Château, Rennes-le-Bain, etc.
Yeah.
Their worship of the Virgin Mary, of Mary Magdalene,
Yeah.
is amazing. She's
Mm.
everywhere there. Not your Madonna, but the Magdalene.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful there. There's this real pagan current that runs underneath, and it's so strong.
Yeah.
That and John the Baptist.
How interesting. What a combination.
Yeah, there's something that is never quite talked about, but it's almost
Yeah.
as if the people of the Languedoc have something they know. And it's like, one of the things I have heard is that John the Baptist was meant to be the Messiah,
Right.
not Jesus. So Magdalene is almost like paired with John the Baptist.
What an
and
interesting
it's-
combination.
It's very powerful there.
Yeah.
You see it wherever you go. And, you know, if ever you get a chance to go, and forget, you know, the Da Vinci Code and all that, but if you
Yeah.
ever get a chance to go to Rennes-le-Château,
Yeah.
that is fascinating. You know, bloody well, what the hell was that priest up to?
Yeah.
It is like, you know, it is like a mystery in
Mm.
itself.
Yeah.
But you think, you jammy old bugger, you were up to something.
Yeah.
Personally, I think he found a cache of gold,
Mm.
of, you know, probably coins dating back, you know, God knows how long.
Yeah,
And he cashed it in on and built a legend around it,
yeah,
just, you
yeah.
know, etc. But it's a wonderful place to go to.
Well, I think on that recommendation for a little kind of tourist recommendation, we'll have to start wrapping things up because we are hitting time. But thank you ever so much for that lovely conversation, touching on so many different topics. Thank you everyone for your questions and being engaged with us. Hopefully we managed to get most addressed for you. I'll get to work on getting everything tidied up for people. So those friends of ours who are watching later.
One thing I want to say, Emma Fitzsimons, just to say to you, as soon as we can, we're going to come over and visit you in your new house. Excellent. Cheers, darling. Love you.
There you go, Emma. Emma's holding up her kettle right now. I think she's indicating a cup of tea will be waiting. There we go. So Emma's had her warning. That's good. Everyone else, thank you ever so much for joining us. Janet, Gavin, thank you ever so much for your time and being with us. And Beck, thank you as always as well for kind of helping lead the conversation and get all those questions answered for us.
And now I'm off for a sexy curry this evening in the
Oh,
curry house.
lovely.
Excellent. Well, we hope you enjoy it. Thank you everyone ever so much.
Take care, all of you. Love to you all.
Love to you too.
Keep smiling.
Bye.